Hello. I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee, and in the process engage you with an anecdote of no small amusement.
Hello, and welcome to another episode here at Nerd Herder. I'm J-Dub.
And I am Boop.
Boop 5000.
Boop 5000.
Yet again, for anyone tuning in live or anyone who watches this on YouTube after the fact, because we do, fun fact and reminder, you can check out Nerd Herder almost everywhere on the interwebs. We are slowly taking over, whether it's audio or video. But if you're checking out the video, yes, yet again, I am in an undisclosed location, continuing the mystery of what does J-Dub do for a living.
I don't know at this point, and I'm afraid to ask.
I don't know, but I know ways I could kill you or bring you back to life. So do with that information with what
promises, promises.
Right. I'm just saying I'd be a great friend to have at Star Wars Celebration when you're passing out from watching the first couple of episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, because I could bring you back if I wanted to.
Yes,
no.
This is where I would put my tickets to Celebration if I had them.
Right, exactly. Yes. If you're looking to rid yourself freely of 2 tickets to Star Wars Celebration, or 4, I'll go ahead and shoehorn some in for our guests here. But let us know. We can't pay you, but we will love you forever.
That's true.
Whatever that's worth.
Invaluable.
But yes, we're back again. And as has been our rhythm where our schedule allows, because sometimes we move things around to accommodate what conversations we want to have. But we're doing that tit for tat. Last week we talked about some Star Wars. So this week we're mixing it up and talking about something else. So this is another episode in our lovely series, NerdyVerse, where we talk about all the other things we love. And I mean, we're digging deep for this one.
Yes, we love so many things, guys.
If we haven't lost you when we talked about Halo, Legend of Zelda, Twin Peaks, Doctor Who,
we haven't talked about Twin Peaks yet. Don't make promises.
We did a little bit. So it's not the quality of the conversation, but it's definitely like I came here for the Star Wars. What in the world is this? Because sometimes there's okay, I get it. This is sci-fi. This is space wizards. It's relatable, or maybe it's real wizards. Lord of the Rings, Willow, stuff like that. Maybe okay, I can see the connection. But today, we are talking about something that has, I'd argue, no connection to Star Wars or anything we're known for.
Listen, man. Okay, this is an episode that I've been wanting to do forever. I'll be and we just now got an opportunity to do it.
Yes, because we are not the only ones that wanted to do this episode. We also have our buddies from the Force Losers podcast, who I'll go ahead and add in. Brad and Kev, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
Oh man, we're hanging. I mean, I've been in the lobby since the last show. I've just been hanging.
It's true. We can't get rid of him at this point.
He just lives in the backstage. It's really Kevin's place.
He has his own box and everything.
Yep,
it's true.
Right.
Yep.
Just someone needs crackers.
Someone needs to change the litter. Just so you guys know.
There is no litter in there, so I don't know.
Kevin, those are Pop Rocks.
Yeah, we've got Kev in the backstage. We've got Michael McCoy in the closet. The Boop house grows and grows more mysterious.
I need to see that series now, the Boop House.
Oh, that's a good one.
It starts off really wholesome and then just gets,
turns
weird.
Fucking dark.
So for those that have been listening for a while, you all may be familiar with Kev and maybe Brad, but I know more recently we've had Kev on because the little guy needs an outlet for all his bat chat. And so we helped him out. We scratched the itch. And so Kev is a regular here now, but we're finally bringing in Brad.
Yeah.
And so
I've been here, twice before?
Yeah.
Once before?
Yes.
Sadly, a long ways away. I mean, Kev and I have talked about that. Like, it took us a good minute to recollaborate and listen and song reference. But for our folks tuning in, Brad, tell us a little bit about you. Why don't you talk about the Force Losers podcast? You're a little bit more.
Oh Lord. About the Force Losers podcast, man.
Rated R.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, we've been better. We've gotten better.
I mean, we're practicing because we come to a
Yeah.
more PG-13 environment here, so we have to like.
Right. We bring you out in front of the decent and young company so that you can learn how to not
Yeah.
say so many 4-letter words.
Yep.
Decent.
We're
Yeah.
learning.
Decent.
Respectable.
Yeah. Respectably decent. Oh gosh.
Oh, but Lord, the Force Losers podcast. I mean, when was the last time we recorded?
1873.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
The year of our Lord.
Yes.
Yes, the year of our Lord 1873.
I mean, it's just like we're very much the same in the sense that like it's when we can do it, and
absolutely.
you know, it's especially recently. It's felt like everything has conspired against us.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna get there.
What is it? Life gets lifey.
That's a J-Dub original, and I have co-opted it and used it.
I said that.
Yes,
That's brilliant.
yes, you said that on an
Maybe
episode of
get
your
lifey.
show,
I
and it
should
stuck
write these
with me.
things down.
It stuck with me. It stuck with me to the point that even I told my therapist that, and he was like, "I like that."
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Man.
you're crossing boundaries, man.
I love when I hear that I've made it into people's therapy sessions.
I'm just gonna stay quiet on that one.
Well, but you know, one of the things I like about you guys and your format and everything. I mean, if anybody tuning in, anybody listening now after the fact, whatever, if you like our conversational style and everything, we've completely stolen that. Like we've gotten
true.
that from folks like the Force Losers podcast and others who just take a very casual approach to it. You know, we still, because we are nerds, it's literally in our name. We've got to live up to it. We do try and throw some facts and information, but everything we do about community and like casual communication and everything, you guys do to 11, and I love that. And you know, it's just fun, and that's definitely it. So there's a meme that goes around, and if I had thought about it, I would have included it to show it. But it's like this kid hanging out with a poster of other kids, and it's just like what it's like listening to a podcast. And that is the Force Losers podcast for sure, because it feels like hanging out. You just can't say anything.
Big
I
time.
mean, I love how complimentary you're being, but it's like you're describing in very nice ways just our lack of effort.
Yeah.
Dude.
I work with kids a lot. Okay, I've got to get it around to that positive somehow.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it though.
But I mean,
Absolutely.
like you
You
listen
guys have
like
a very
what the
unique
first
podcast.
you listen like the first 10 episodes of our podcast.
Don't
Yeah.
do it.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, don't go
it's-
back to our original stuff.
No.
No, we were scripted.
Yeah. So are we.
Yeah. But I mean, but that's the thing. Like what I've discovered about this whole podcasting racket is it is so not about what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
It's not about that. It's about who you're doing it with. And like, as much as I joke about minimal effort, and it is minimal, it's the people that we've met. It's the connections we've made. That's the stuff. Like, I mean, we're almost 5 years into this thing, and like, that's the best accomplishment. It's not the number of episodes. It's not the stuff we talked about. It's the people we've hung out with, to the point where like I'm just hanging out in your backstage area.
Yeah.
You know, before long, I'm going to have a shed in your backyard, and that's just, you know, that's going to be the way it goes.
You're still gonna call it a she shed.
Yeah.
You've already got one, baby.
Yeah, our
Like,
shed
move
is
in.
Kevin shaped and sized. So
Perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect.
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and you know, in Nerd Herder, that's what we try to be about, and that's what we always like push people to is lean into the community of podcasting, not necessarily the content of podcasting.
Right.
Also, just do what you want, because podcasting is such an umbrella term now that you know, and that we definitely fell into that trap. We tried to do what we liked about other podcasts at first, and I joke about stealing formats, but usually what we steal is the things that like loosen us up, the things that move us away from formula,
Right.
and everything, you know. And so, I mean, it's just a weekly hangout with friends for us now, and
That's exactly it.
weirdos on the internet decide to listen to it.
That's exactly it.
That's
exactly it, man. I mean, that's the best part.
Yep. So some housekeeping just up top for those checking it out. Be sure to check out the description. We do put information there. This is madness, but we do try to formalize that. So check that out, including a reminder about the Amidala initiative.
Yes.
Group of podcasts, 77 podcasts. That's awesome. Still promoting and doing all kinds of cool things to raise funds for Equality Texas to help out LGBTQ plus youth, particularly trans youth, who are being targeted and affected by legislation right now. And so that's ongoing. That's people's lives. And so although it seems like we've been talking about that for a while, there's people living in that. So please check out how you can help out with that, even if it's just promotion.
Absolutely.
And shamelessly now I say also, as far as promotion, if you like this, then definitely like it, rate it, review it wherever you like to get it. If you really, really like it, then definitely share. And I will point out, because it's a new link, we do have merch. We do have 2 t-shirt designs available, and there's a link to it in the description that you can check out. That's all the business stuff.
I'm just saying, I got a paycheck coming up pretty soon, and that Boop Roasted My Beans shirt is calling my name. That is calling my name. And
good reminder for that one. It's through TeePublic, so you can get that on a coffee cup. You can get that on all kinds of stuff. Moo has figured out how to do the banners, and I am afraid. Merch.
Look out.
I love it.
That's awesome. We have a kid who he has the bad habit of taking single syllable things and like saying them like a goblin, and it's like wormed its way into my habits.
That is amazing.
I have to try so hard not to just belt that out all the time whenever new words enter my brain.
Merch.
Merch.
That's going to be a new character in D&D for me now.
There you go.
There you
go.
Merch.
If I can have a character named Beef, you can have a character named Merch, who only says his name.
Yes.
Yes. I believe that's just a Pokemon. So, yes. What has brought us together, again, something completely different, although robots are sort of droids, so I guess maybe there's a connection to be had there, especially with 000 in the Darth Vader comics. Evil C-3PO is definitely Star Wars equivalent of a Terminator.
Absolutely.
There's also
HK-47.
HK-47, IG-88. Oh my gosh.
My boy.
And then more recently reintroduced into canon, we have Valance, the bounty hunter, which if you're reading the Bounty Hunter comics, he literally just looks like a Terminator. The only good thing about the Yuzon Vong, they make droids that like hunt and kill the Yuzon Vong that literally look like Terminators. They look like
perfect.
They're C-3POs with skull faces. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, like that design of the T-800 is one of the most perfectly designed robots you will ever see. Like, it's just there's everything about it is perfect.
It's so
everything.
It's amazing because this is, I think, 1 or 2 days after the late Stan Winston's birthday.
Yeah.
Stan Winston, who, if you loved 80s to 90s action, horror, any of that stuff, he designed it.
Yep.
He designed the thing you either fell in love with or the thing that scared the crap out of you as a kid.
That dude had his hands in everything.
Oh my gosh. I mean, so much, what a legacy. So many memorable things. And so, Terminator, iconic. And what's funny is it's not just the design. I would argue, when the first film dropped, it had a little bit of a Star Wars effect in that it was unlike sci-fi ever before.
Absolutely.
And definitely that kind of thing that feels difficult to replicate or follow up. But when most people talk about Terminator or the series of films, which is what we're talking about, by the way, I don't know if I explicitly said that.
Yeah, it's a Terminator show.
Right. Hate to break it to you guests who didn't know that. No. But like when I talk to a lot of people about like Terminator memories or favorite moments or anything like that, they don't talk about the first one as much. Usually they talk about Terminator 2, T2. And I just think that's such a fascinating thing. And the fact that it is James Cameron in both situations, the way he was able to outdo himself, I think is very impressive. But before we talk about T2, I wanted to kind of preface how this began, or really I wanted Kevin and Brad to preface how this began, because Kev, your discovery, and you kind of put it out there on Twitter, which is a good reason to follow Force Losers podcast on Twitter.
Yes.
But that your discovery domino affected into we gotta do something with this.
Yes. So okay, so I'm gonna dial this way back, right? Like Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 are my earliest memories of watching movies. That's how foundational these films are. Like my love of film, Terminator. My love of film scores, Terminator. A lot of my creativity, Terminator. I have a
tattoo.
I have a tattoo of a T-800 on my arm, right? Now, so fast forward, Brad and I were reviewing Terminator Dark Fate.
I think it was episode 13.
No, this was much further. We were
was it?
reviewing, we were reviewing Dark Fate. This was only like a few years ago.
Yeah, that was 2018, 19?
Yeah, 2019, something like
2019. Good movie, by the way.
Oh, amazing. And in the middle of us talking about this is when this guy decides to hit me with a little factoid.
So glad that I recorded it.
If you find the episode, you will hear my brain exploding. He tells
me
the
aneurysm.
Exactly. He tells me in the middle of us talking about this that he had never seen T1 or T2. And I did not know this. I didn't have a questionnaire when we became friends. I'm like, did you see this movie? Like, this was never discussed. He kept this from me for years. And like, this was not the first time I had talked about Terminator on the podcast. Like, I have talked about it other times. Nothing. He didn't say a thing. And he hits me with this, and I melt in my seat. So it's been a running joke of like, he will now not watch Terminator. He would keep like hanging that over my head, like he wasn't gonna watch. It was a thing.
It's like, oh yeah, no, I know I can watch it, but I'm not going to.
So I saw something recently. Somebody had posted, a friend of mine, that was like, the only reason I don't watch Star Wars movies is to see the reaction when I say I've never seen one. Mm-hmm. And I feel that sort of same chaotic energy from
that's Brad being a chaos troll.
Like I do understand to a point, and then I will turn it to Boot to hear your kind of introduction to this as well. Clearly we know now that Brad was forced. What's that orange movie with the people?
I'm sorry.
I'm trying.
Orange.
I can't tell if it's an alien or if it's like a bad impression of like a Southerner.
No, it's the guy that was the butler in Haunted Mansion, but when he was young and he wore a top hat.
Oh my gosh, you're talking about Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange, there we go.
I was not going there. I was not going in that direction at all.
You be thankful that is not okay.
That is what they sound like. Here, chastise me later, crucify me later for that.
I will.
My point being, Brad has been forced to consume Terminator now to correct his sins. Anyway, but
is this a bad time to mention something? I'm totally messing with you guys. Don't worry.
So I never finished it.
I know where you live.
I saw your Twitter. I know you started it, but I'm going to assume you finished it. Let's go with that.
No, I did. Don't worry. You're good.
I get though. Because Kev, you and I have talked about this, and as NerdyVerse slowly becomes like an 80s action relive podcast, yes. Our love of Arnold Schwarzenegger is real. He is the king of action B movies of that era and everything. And say what you will, these movies are fantastic. I do think T2 gets a little bit more Academy than the first one for sure. It's definitely more the American graffiti to Star Wars kind of situation.
Bingo.
But nonetheless, they're still lower level. They're still just fun movies. They're not meant to be the biggest deal. And so it's okay that it's a B action movie, but because I fell in love with Arnie movies and whatnot, that was the only thing I had. Like, that was the litmus test for what I consumed for a while as a youngin'. And that was what my mother fed me. Like, she kept my supply going of just like, oh, you liked Commando? All right, Last Action Hero. Oh, you like that too? True Lies. And it just got weirder and weirder until finally she comes home with this. And it's funny because it's like such a vivid memory for me of her bringing home the VHS and everything. And like the reason she was like, all right, I know you like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I think you'll like it because of this. And she shows me the back that clearly has the T-800 on the back. Mm-hmm. And she's like, look, it's a Bionicle. It was the crazy, because she genuinely thought like that's that thing you
that's
like.
Adorable.
And you know, my mother had no awareness or filter of just like, oh, she's cutting his arm off.
That's adorable.
And so like that was the only reason. 80s action movies and an adorable and sometimes too innocent mother that introduced me to it. But if you're not into those things, and especially, I mean, timing wise, I don't know. Like I said, I was watching that at like 5, 6.
Same.
You know, if you were watching Power Rangers then and you weren't into action movies until later, maybe you weren't there until Die Hard with a Vengeance or one of the other later 90s movies. I get how you can miss Terminator is my point. But when you realize you have missed it, it's a good thing to go back to, because they are at least the first two are very, 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 very good movies.
Special movies.
Very special.
Absolutely. So, but for you, I can't remember. Had you seen it before us?
Nope.
No. Okay.
So I was aware, as everybody pretty much is, of Terminator, because it is such a part of the collective conscious that, of course, you know what Terminator is. Everybody's seen like the still of the hand going into the lava, like Terminator. I'll be back, So for a long time, I didn't think that I needed to watch it until I met this dork at a summer camp, and I don't know how I made it until we got engaged, where you were just like, you've never seen Terminator. We can't get married without you seeing Terminator. So
that wasn't legitimate, because you're
that's fair.
Played
that's
fastball.
That's right.
But it definitely was a test of just like how into this are you?
That's fair.
If you'll put up with that. Again, it's definitely one of those things. It's so referential, especially the second one, that you can kind of get that feeling. Also, and then first of all, shout out to friend of the show, Andy, in the chat. They are amazing, first of all. But also, I love and want to continue to endorse Andy's efforts to completely change the aspect at which I view every film ever. Because
exactly,
it's this, and then it was some other movie, and maybe Andy remembers that I don't. But they were like, "Oh, it's this kind of movie." I'm like, "Huh?" And the way they explained it, I'm just like, dang it, it is now. But yes, this is a Christmas movie about Jesus Christ.
Sure is. Sure is.
It's true.
Just with murder cyborgs.
I mean, it's there if you and what's so funny, and just because Andy's in the chat, and again, shout out to like, check out the live streams. You get direct interaction with us for that. But I was watching Terminator 3 about a month ago, and there is so much religious iconography in that. Like, I hadn't noticed it in in the first or second one, but by the third one, they're really leaning into the whole Jesus thing. So Andy's on to something. So Brad, question for you to kind of start off. We'll pass it around from there. But since you are the more recently indoctrinated and introduced into this, we'll lump it together, T1, T2 kind of thing. Do you agree with the hype around it now? Like, especially, I mean, you're at the hip with Kev, so his hype is really up there. But are these that great of films, and is T2 really a perfect sequel?
I mean, so I will say my first like introduction into Terminator was when I was like a teenager, and yes, agreed.
T1000s for Christmas for everyone.
I would be so irresponsible.
Oh, we all would.
But no, my first introduction into Terminator was Terminator 3, and it was when I was a teenager because I just stumbled across the DVD and I was like, I'll give this a watch. But I will, the hype around T1 and T2, I can understand it. I mean, for the time, I grew up watching. I did watch like Commando, Jingle All the Way, Kindergarten Cop, all those. I mean, it's not like I didn't watch action movies with Arnold in it. It's just never. I just never came across Terminator.
Sure. Well, and I mean, compared to other Arnie stuff, especially the first one, I mean, obviously by the second one, he was a little bit bigger and they leaned on him a little bit more, but definitely the first one, it's not an Arnie movie. Like,
no, not in the traditional sense. No.
It's really not his movie. It's just that it turns out he was the most interesting part of it for sure.
Yeah.
And they definitely dial it up, obviously, in the second one and everyone after it, and make it him.
Exactly. I mean, like Arnold functions in T1 as the boogeyman, right? Because you have to look at T1 not as like a traditional 80s action movie. It has elements of that, but it's much more rooted. It's much more rooted in horror. It's much more rooted in that.
Yeah.
Because James Cameron cast a bodybuilder to play this indestructible, immovable, unstoppable cyborg. Yeah, a sentient toaster, right?
Basically.
And then what Arnold does with that, because he has less than 100 lines of dialogue in the whole movie, right? But what he does with his mannerisms, like one of my favorite anecdotes, and I will always bring this up when talking about T1, any scene in which he is looking for someone, his eyes move first and then his head. And that's deliberate. He deliberately did that to make it look like he was scanning an area like a robot would, and it's that larger than life, unstoppable, crazy presence that just pole vaulted him into like this upper stratosphere of action. And then what they did with T2, what was so brilliant about the sequel is that how do you humanize that? Like how do you humanize this murderous cyborg? It's such a clever and simple idea, but it works so ridiculously well.
Yeah, well, because they have the benefit of that, and Boop, you'll appreciate this, obviously. Like I was wondering if you would go like the way I describe T1 all the time is it's a slasher movie.
Oh yeah,
like, it really is, because it has all of those elements. Because slasher, despite popular belief, doesn't necessarily mean like chainsaw or machete or finger knives. It's just the concept of the villain, and the kind of A to B scenario of the movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of this. It's like a more action leaning sci-fi slasher.
Exactly.
And unlike Jason Voorhees, unlike Michael Myers, the wrong thing to do is to humanize them. The wrong thing to do is to put them too forward into the spotlight and story, right? But with a Terminator, with a advanced learning machine like that, you can get away with that if you do it right. And they've been trying for several times. Sometimes they do it better than others, for sure. T2 had such a good formula, I think, for, like you said, the humanization of him. And really that's where I think, and we'll talk about it more, but I think that's what the sequels are trying to do, is they're not trying to necessarily advance, they're trying to replicate.
Right.
And that can get problematic for films and series and sagas and whatnot. So
very much.
Yes.
But Boop, for you, I mean, because you're also a little bit more recently invested in this. I mean, we've been that'd be like 8-9 years now.
Dear God, we've been together
So-
for a very long time.
Yes, we have. And I
Nice.
still love you. But
That's
for
your
you,
problem.
the hype around these movies, I mean, because you had me hyping it up, much like Brad had Kev. I was hyping. I'm like, you've got to. These are
Mhm.
like, because I put these as some of the best of Arnie's films.
Absolutely.
Does the hype live up for you? Do you get it? Do you agree with it? Maybe.
I mean, I love T1 for, like you said, the horror movie that it is. It's an excellent sci-fi horror. I think it's one of the best I've ever seen. It's very hard to do robots and horror at the same time. I mean, you can get T1 or you can get Chopping Mall. Like,
Yeah.
it's a toss-up, babe.
Watch
Like,
both, please.
watch both. Both are very good. Yeah, like after watching it, I definitely understood where you were coming from with all of that because I have distinct memories with, much like, Transformers, you taking me over to the shelf of your figures and explaining to me what this was, where it was from, and the entire history, which is one of my favorite things to do with you. It's a lovely bonding experience. But like being able to put content to faces and concepts is always very helpful.
We will get there, Andy. We will be referencing forward a little bit, just because I do love the underrated Dark Fate of all of the
Absolutely.
sequels.
Incredibly underrated.
And I will say, Terminator 2 is the best sequel ever made.
That is a fair point.
So
I mean, fair.
Yeah, well, and that's sort of so back to after Kevin and I had that exchange, about, hey, I'm having to get Brad into this. I'm having to catch him up a little bit. Like, that would be amazing to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
And then kind of sparsing out of just like, it's not only just the introduction to it, but like this, like, you've got to see the first one, but then you get the benefit of compounding it with, but it's got such a perfect sequel.
Yep.
And so, that really decided the fiber of this episode of, how you follow up greatness, right? Like, so yeah, it's Terminator 2, the perfect sequel. Maybe we do have some definitive claims so far, but like part of it's because like to recognize the goodness of the second one, you have to acknowledge that it was following up a pretty big deal at the time as well. I wouldn't say the first one's a perfect film by any standard, but definitely what he's able to turn around and do with the second one from the success. Because it's almost a weird Sam Raimi Evil Dead situation where like the first one's not perfect, but it's pure.
Right.
And then it's not the second one. It's a remake, but it's not a remake. It's weird. But then he comes back and he's like, all right, this is my pure passion, but with a budget.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's T2 to me. Like, I think part of what makes it better is just money. Like, I hate to equate it to that. But that's definitely a big factor. They're able to do so much more. Like, T2 has a lot of scale to it.
Huge.
More action scenes, more heavy action scenes, like several throughout real traffic. Because if you go back and watch T1, most of the time those trucks, they're passing like one or two cars. Like they're T2, they're actually down the highway. We get 2 truck chase scenes. We get a freaking helicopter.
Yes.
Like, oh my. And all right, let's stop and appreciate. Like, we love action movies, 80s especially, but like this preys on and defined the next 10 years too, right? Like, you've got to have a minigun.
Well,
like, you're doing an action movie, you've got to have a minigun now.
You're absolutely right, because it's set, and much to its honestly, I think much to the franchise's detriment, T2 set an incredible, a crazy precedent, because when you have a sequel that, when you take the first film and you're like, okay, where do we take it from here? Well, we turn the T-800 on its head. Instead of being a murderous cyborg, it learns the value of human life. Okay, so we need a bad guy. Well, we have all this cool special effects. Let's make one that's polymorphic, and plus let's cast Robert Patrick. Well, he'll scare people for generations.
Apparently,
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's a very scary blank face when a man can have that.
Yes.
So not to take off the thought train, but I just realized what our connection to Star Wars is, because the special effects were done by ILM.
Yep.
No,
There you go.
Yep.
There it
You made
is.
work.
I mean, and then on top of that, right? Like, okay, one little fun factoid about Robert Patrick is the T-1000. The scene in the hallway of the mall where he's shooting at the T-800, he trained himself for months not to blink when he discharged a firearm, specifically for that. And
Insane.
like, and I will admit freely, the T-1000 plagued my nightmares for years. You know, like there was that scene in Wayne's World where he has a cameo.
Yes.
I had to close my eyes. Because I was like, oh no.
Well, it's that,
Buddy.
and then he gets. It's funny because like going back a few years later when I had first watched Terminator 2, and watching Last Action Hero and being like, the guy, you know, because he gets a little cameo there. It was so.
Absolutely.
Oh my god! But yeah, Robert Patrick is amazing. Also, sorry to our audio listeners for that clap. I didn't mean to, but I got excited.
Oh, we're gonna get a lot more excited, buddy.
Yell at me later, but just FYI, you have to subscribe to yell at me.
Yeah.
You have to buy merch.
Robert Patrick's fantastic. He does a lot of good things. He's continued to do a lot of great things. I actually recently just rewatched Walk the Line. He plays the dad in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you think about the T-1000, what it needs to do, it needs to be, because the thing that makes T1 so indomitable is like, how do you stop this thing? So with the T-1000, how do you stop something that's mimetic and polymorphic and can assume anyone's shape? Like, and I love the fact that like right off the bat, the T-800 says it's an advanced prototype. Like it's the same line that Kyle Reese gives in T1 where it's like, can you kill it? Like with these weapons, I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like in the first one, you know, they're like, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't eat, it doesn't get thirsty. It goes until it gets you and terminates you. And it's funny because all of that is taken away from the T-800 in this next one, right?
Yep.
The number of times he's like incapacitated, the
Yep.
number of times he is whooped.
It's beanish.
Yeah, I mean, they really do a great job of, it's not just the humanization, but they take away the threat of him to add to the threat of the T-1000, because
exactly
profile wise, Robert Patrick in the 90s was not a threatening man.
No.
Well, I mean, after I watched the second movie, I was like, I want to look into this more. And like one of the favorite little factoids that I read was how he trained himself to sprint, and they had to redo that the motorbikes, the dirt bike scene like several times because he kept catching up.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
yeah.
That is insane.
He kept catching the kid on the bike because he trained.
That's awesome. Well, and I mean, and he's that kind of guy, and especially, I mean, he's gotten older. That's all I mean. But like in his earlier years involved in action and film, I mean, he was dedicated. He was one of those guys. I mean, you know, I mentioned Die Hard before. He was in Die Hard 2, and he was one of those goons that's memorable, man. Like everything he did until he was the guy in front of the camera. He was a Star Wars character. He was that guy that was more interesting than everything else on the screen at times.
Yeah.
And I think it's and one thing before we move on from T-1000, but look into, we already mentioned it, and it's because I love Stan Winston and Stan Winston Studios. They've done amazing things with practical technology, makeup and effects and everything. Look into how they did that stuff, because like the moments where the T-1000 gets shot and you see the mimetic alloy like pop, that's physical. That is not CGI, right?
Yep.
Like the work that they did to bring Cameron's vision to life for this very edgy and dangerous like creature, like this could have flopped so bad.
Oh yeah.
So easily. And it worked. And it's that marrying between Stan Winston Studios, ILM, and a couple of other digital shops that did some touch up and everything. But like bringing those together really, I think we're going to get nearer to a point where it ages itself. But right now, I still think it works pretty well.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. It doesn't feel dated to me.
Yeah, like
No.
the one time I'll give you is after the truck crash in the earlier part of the movie, the first kind of interaction with the T800 and T1000. You know, the T1000 outside with a lot of color and pop. Okay, but I'll see that and raise you the scene of the him reforming in the forgery or
the
whatever
steel mill. Yeah,
steel mill. First of all, the physical effects of the melting, the rejoining, and then into the digital, you can't tell me that's not beautiful.
Dude,
no, it is.
The blending of the stop motion effects mixed with the magic that they made with CGI is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you all mentioned the scary of the T1000. I was watching Predator at like 4. It didn't hit me, but I will say the one thing that did creep me out and kind of still is a noise that kind of is nails on a chalkboard for me is the scream of the T1000 when it goes into the water.
Yes.
Or, well, not the water. It is water for the actor, but into the lava.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like kind of like that metallic screech.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
because like the whole idea is like machines can't feel pain. Like what does the T800 say? You know, when John Connor asks him, does it hurt when you get shot? You know, I sense injuries. The data could be called pain. You know, the T1000 is like literally screaming in pain because it's melting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's such a cool thing because like the entire time you see that character, the T1000, he's just stone faced. Even when he's doing the whole no thing, stone faced. And then you throw him in some lava and he's like, eh.
Well, yeah, that they really up, and that's where a little bit more of the horror comes in. I think that overall there's not much of it in that film, but that's a scene that definitely is like uncomfortable.
Absolutely, and it's Brad Feidel's score. It's the orchestration he had behind that death of the T1000. It's so chaotic and messy. Like Brad Fiedel deserves so much credit for the scores for T1 and T2. They're some of my favorites, period.
Well, because I mean, you go and you read it in the music, like John Williams' level of understanding the material, because like in the first one, it's definitely that cold and distant and dreary kind of sound to the score.
It's almost like noir.
Yeah, it's definitely it doesn't feel good, but it doesn't feel bad. It's uncertain.
It's kind of depressing.
And you follow that up with, I mean, a full 2-minute score in the opening scene that feels like freaking heroic theme.
Yeah, it's everything's scaled up, man. Everything's scaled up.
It's so good. Like, I mean, it's definitely like the Terminator theme at the beginning of T2 is up there with the levels of like Iron Man's theme or even Superman's of like, no, this is an anthem for this character. This is legit. Brad, I'll start off with you for this next little bit, but just because you mentioned that you started out with Terminator 3, not as bad of a sequel as I think a lot of people think it is.
I would agree.
Yeah.
But so what for you do you think T2 got right as a sequel that T3 or any of the others you saw maybe didn't? Why hasn't it continued its success throughout the series?
Well, I think what it is that they did so well with T2 and they saw so much success with T2. I feel like they tried to duplicate that, but they couldn't quite get the formula again. I mean, because it's the same T800 versus a new prototype again. That's all it is. And guess what? This one kind of changes around too. I think did this one have a endoskeleton or was it a?
It had an endoskeleton, but it had a polymimetic.
It was kind of a pre-Dark Fate kind of thing because Dark Fate did a very similar. We're gonna do both kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. They definitely made it feel more validated for existing.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just that thing. I feel like the third movie just kind of tried to duplicate 2, and people had already seen that, and they already had the expectations of 2 going into it.
Yeah, sure. I would agree.
They basically just shot themselves in the foot, I think.
Yeah, because like I mean, if T3 has one biggest flaw, it's that the stakes are the same as T2. Like the stakes in T1 are save Sarah Connor, protect her at all costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The stakes in T2: protect John Connor at all costs. Oh yeah, we're also going to stop Skynet in the cradle, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna kill it in the cradle. So the stakes are raised. With T3, we have to stop Skynet. Well,
Yeah.
you already did that. Then what I will give T3 credit for is when I saw it in the theaters, I was not prepared for the way it ended.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the point I was going to make. Like, I like that it actually spends 80% of the film making you think that the stakes are the same. And
Right.
only I appreciate it, and I think it was a decent twist.
I agree.
Like,
because that twist made it for me. That made it like the thing like, okay, cool. All right.
Right.
See, I kind of hesitated with that though, because I feel like the twist ending, like it was a good twist and everything, but I feel like that might have, like, I kind of had the thought of, oh, they're just doing that so they can make more movies.
Yeah, they kind of were.
Fair. I mean, yeah.
I mean,
look, there's a value in James Cameron being very like deliberate with the ending. I mean, he was even almost more deliberate. I mean, we almost got an old Sarah Connor watching her son and grandson situation.
Yep.
That would have definitely been a nail in the coffin. But like what we got was a very like, nah, we kind of saved the day. Like,
yeah,
we really did it. So you can watch it both ways. Like you can watch T2 and be done, or if you're so what I like about T3 at least is it is a little safe, same stakes like you mentioned, Kev. I mean, even kind of to the nitty-gritty. We got the truck scene again, we got the weapon stash scene again, right? Like, okay. But there were a couple of things that showed that what they did had an effect, but not necessarily the desired effect, right? Like John Connor does still die in the timeline, just not when they think it would happen.
Right.
Skynet launches, but not necessarily the way they think it would have, or the way it originally would have. If anything, because it even alludes to they actually advanced it because, Judgment Day happening on August 19th, 1997. Right, like technology then is very different than 2005 or 3. I can't remember.
2003, yeah.
2003. I mean, it's a little jump, but it's enough of a jump where it's like, we actually gave Skynet more advanced technology to start their murder with.
Right.
I like, Moo, I don't remember what you called it, but you described the reason I like Butterfly Effect recently.
It's tragedy porn.
So it's the thing of just like it's gonna end badly one way or the other. It's like the lesser of evils,
right?
And this movie kind of does that, where it's just like it's a bunch of just not working out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
I can't stand that.
I mean, it is. I think T3 is undeservedly maligned. I definitely do think so. And I mean, I'll even say that about all the sequels. I mean, Salvation was
for sure.
I mean, that was unfairly maligned. Even Genesis. I mean, all the stuff
that was fair.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, I'll be.
I mean, like, okay, so Genesis has moments for me. It really does. Like, and maybe it's just my affinity for Arnold, but there's that moment at the end of Genesis where he tells Kyle Reese to protect his Sarah, and that's like the climax of the movie. Like that got me. That hit me.
Yes. There's little everything that's good about Genesis for me, and I use that loosely because it's very brief, because it hinges on that kind of those referential things.
Yeah.
I love the T-1000 in Genesis.
Yeah.
Like, I love the opening scene of him facing off with the OG T-800.
Right.
I like all of those things. I just don't like the main plot.
Oh, sure. And it's messy, and it was obviously they were trying to like reboot the franchise and try something different. And it was just, I have to give them credit for trying it and using the more meta aspects of the time travel and that, like, credit where credit's due. But I mean,
and see that is the exact reason why I knew it wasn't time to tell him I hadn't watched 1 and 2 yet.
Oh, come on. Now, the movie that I wish they would have sequelized in a big bad way is Salvation. Salvation set the groundwork for such interesting stuff that could have been done with it.
Well, it was supposed to be a trilogy.
It was
originally going to be more. It was going to be the next 3, maybe the end. I don't know.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, like Salvation inspired the hell out of me. When I first saw that, I was like, yes, because there were moments within Salvation that felt like Terminator, felt like it. There were good references, good character development. It inspired me so much that I wrote my own fan fiction around that universe, man. Like I wrote chapters of stuff,
It was the part of Terminator we all wanted to see, and
Exactly.
I think some people had fantasized too long about what it would be, and
I agree.
had a Last Jedi kind of experience with it.
I would absolutely agree.
And that's really the only thing I can hold against Salvation, because I think, for me, like the top ones are definitely 1, 2, Salvation and Dark Fate. Like,
Yeah.
3 is really good. It's safe. It's
Exactly.
It's definitely better than Genesis. But all of the others do something well and are referential while also being mostly original, and definitely like widening the understanding of this universe, which is hard for as long as we've had these films. I mean, this is 1983, 84?
84 for T1.
84? So, I mean, like, geez, we're almost at 40 years of Terminator. It's getting harder and harder to do and do well in original.
Exactly. And it's also harder to like make it relevant to the time. I mean, because in 1984,
True.
a giant, supercomputer that inhabited an entire space was the norm. I mean, you have a supercomputer, right here now. So, it's hard to adapt it to a modern setting. I'll give it that. I mean, if I'm going to heap praise on Dark Fate, that's what Dark Fate did. It was able to adapt it to the modern, because instead of a single sentience launching nuclear missiles, it was, it was an internet thing, and then everything started to collapse, and that was how it was subtly getting control, and that's the thing. Dark Fate, while bringing it into more modern context, still felt like Terminator. It felt like T1, T2, because again, I think anything that follows T2 has a hell of a climb. Like you better be ready to scale some summits, because it is perfect. It's perfect from start to finish. T2 is perfect, flawless. You must enshrine it in some kind of like forever preserved thing where nobody can touch it, nobody can sully it.
It belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and I definitely think we're getting to that point where I would be okay with no. I'd love a sequel to Dark Fate. I would like more, but I'm also okay if we don't, because of exactly what you're talking about, Kev. We're getting to a point where it's just like, I don't know how much more we can do this and do this well.
I mean, you know what you could do with it though, because we've talked a lot about Arnie and we've talked about the T-1000. We have not talked about Linda Hamilton. And
no, we haven't.
The arc of Linda Hamilton from T1, being this very
demure.
Well, I mean, like just like deer in the headlights. What the hell is going on? To the capable but somewhat crazy version of Linda Hamilton that we get in T2.
Hot.
If Linda Hamilton didn't make you feel a certain way,
you weren't watching the right movie.
By her best performance in T3, where she was dead.
Yes.
Hey.
But then what I loved about Dark Fate, Linda Hamilton in Dark Fate, is capable. She's still the same capable Sarah Connor, but she's just got this sadness, man. Because I mean, we've talked about Dark Fate on the show and how it opened up. I mean, like the balls on that movie to open up with murking John Connor. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And you have this capable but broken Sarah Connor. So what you could do if you wanted to carry the franchise further, and you don't want to do it through the medium of film because it's maybe too risky, you're spending too much money on something you might not get a return on, series. Like we did the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which was amazing.
Yes.
Do it within the Dark Fate universe. Because Linda Hamilton almost carried Dark Fate for me. Like she turned in such a good performance.
Oh yeah. I mean, and honestly, I feel like that Like, anyone noticed that, like, all these movies that were like, they just weren't quite as good, just didn't have Linda Hamilton in them.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant point, Brad. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Sarah Connor Chronicles, and that was a part of my list to make sure to mention and hopefully encourage people to check out, because it's good. It's just not. Don't connect it to anything other than the bare basics of the original plot.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, like, the principal plot of T1 and T2, that's it. And then Sarah Connor Chronicles. It's fantastic. It's such an interesting what if to follow. And that's what I do like, right? Is you can follow any path you want.
Exactly.
Andy mentioned, and I agree with them that, 1, 2, and Dark Fate are a fantastic trilogy.
Absolutely.
You could do 1, 2, 3. You could do 1, 2, 3 in Salvation. You could do 1, 2 Sarah Connor. Like, it's a choose your own adventure.
Yes.
Like, come on, it's fantastic, and every one of them have murder robots. So, like,
absolutely.
Hell yeah.
And Andy's right. Mackenzie Davis deserves a lot of credit, because that character in Dark Fate, that's another hallmark of Terminator films, right? There's always an escalation of the technology. So the T-1000 is the escalation in T2, and it's a perfect fit to that. So how do you escalate for Dark Fate? Not only do you have this Rev 9, which is polymimetic and seemingly unstoppable, you also have the Resistance fighter, who is also augmented. And it's such a brilliant spin on it.
She got a better hand at what they tried to do with Sam Worthington in Salvation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I love Salvation, but that hinging it on his character and that kind of thread wasn't the best and strongest pillar.
Yeah.
Interesting, but just didn't get there. Here, no, this is a major pillar holding up this film.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, absolutely. Praise where praise is due for that. So one thing to kind of wrap up here for us, unfortunately, look, we're in the long haul for this. We have too much fun to not do this more. So we're bound to talk about this stuff more.
I mean, I could go another hour.
Oh, easily. But going around, I have another final question for us, but going around. So final verdict, 2 votes from you. I realize my hand's not on the camera. I'm an idiot.
No, you're cute.
1 is Terminator. 2, a perfect sequel. And number 2, is it the best Terminator has to offer? We've pretty much talked about everything, not necessarily at the same length. That's the nature of the format. But so, is it a perfect sequel, and is it the best of the Terminator series? What are your thoughts, Brad? I like picking on you, so I'm going to start with
That's fine. I would definitely say that. I mean, it's especially these days, it's hard to find a sequel that doesn't just repeat the same thing. It doesn't try and do something totally different. They built off of what they already had, and that worked out very well for them. I would say yes, it's probably the perfect sequel. I think the only thing that stopped me from finishing T2 in one sitting was the fact that I watched it starting at 4:00 in the morning after dropping my wife off at work, and then I had to go to work at 7:30, and I had to start getting ready to go to work.
It's a decently long movie.
Yeah. But I had to stop watching it at 6:00 because I had to get myself and my daughter ready. So, but I mean, that's the only thing that stopped me from finishing it in one sitting. I would say it's definitely up there. It's especially these days, very hard to find a perfect sequel. I think they did it.
For sure. Boop. 5,000.
Boop 5,000. I think I've already said, in my mind, it is the perfect sequel because it takes the concepts of the first movie and absolutely just takes it to 5 bajillion in quality and in concept. Like, the scene where he rips off his arm and it's the stop motion cybernetic, that lives in my head rent free. Mm-hmm. Not just because of that clip where someone edited Kermit over the hand.
That's good.
It's an excellent meme. But yeah, like I laud it as one of the best movies I've ever seen, and one of the best sequels to ever exist because of the quality of the movie in general. Like, even if it wasn't a Terminator movie, you'd have to take out a lot of stuff to not make it a Terminator movie, but you get what I mean. Like, it is a fantastic freaking movie. It's scary. It's fun to watch. It's got great dialogue. You got Arnie trying to smile. Who wouldn't want to watch that? I think it is the perfect sequel. Isn't it?
Kev, remind me, is that in the standard edition or the director's edition?
That is in the special editions. We'll call it the special editions.
There you go. On brand.
Does he have a beak?
Yeah, it's one of those things where that scene where he's like attempting to smile. Yeah, that's not in the theatrical cut. Also, not in the theatrical cut is one of the most integral scenes to T2. It's when they reset his chip. When they actually reset his chip. That is so integral. I don't know why James Cameron didn't leave it in there.
And I honestly think it's the reason so many people don't realize Linda Hamilton's a twin.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, again, brilliant filmmaking. You utilize the resources that you have.
Exactly. Kev, you also kind of answered, but
So is it the perfect sequel? Yes. Unequivocally, it is. If there's a pantheon of perfect sequels, it's absolutely in there. Is it the best the franchise has to offer? That's a harder one because for me, my heart always goes to T1 because that was my first memory. It's the one that every time I watch it, it's like I'm watching it for the first time. It's that integral. But T2 also has some really awesome memories wrapped up in it. You know, like I'll just give you a few real quick. We rented it from Blockbuster, and this was the 90s, so we rented it from Blockbuster, and we stacked our two VCRs together, and we pirated that thing, and we kept it. We returned the tape, but we kept our own copy, and I had it on a VHS that was T1 and T2. I could watch them back to back, and I recreated so many scenes from T2 when I was a kid, right? Like I recreated the scene where he's pulling the pipe out and he's reviving himself, and so is it the best it has to offer? Probably. It's so hard for me to rank these things because they're so important to me. Sure. Terminator means everything to me. Like for a small kid who was awkward and shy and didn't know how to talk to people and felt very small and weak to identify with a character that would literally walk through bullets and was unfazed. It was like I looked at that character and thought, like, I want to be that. You know what I mean? So if I had to answer honestly, what does the best the Terminator has to offer? The whole franchise is the best it has to offer. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's so hard for me to like boil down like what's the best. You know what I mean?
Sure. Absolutely.
I mean, but conventionally speaking, yeah, T2 is probably the best that you're going to get.
It's good. Well, I mean, that's the hard but lovely thing about, what we do and what we talk about is our heart's in it, and that's why we like talking about that. That's why we do the show, is because like passionate answers are way better than like factual. And I know that would get me like screwed in politics, but like, I don't want to hear your like thesis on why the movie's perfect. I want to know why you like it. Like, two different equations there. I think it's in the Hall of Fame of perfect sequels. Because time is a crazy concept, I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect sequel just because things change and everything's representative of its kind of space in that time spectrum. And so for this era of filmmaking, for this era of sci-fi and action, it's one of the best sequels out there for sure.
Absolutely.
All time, that's harder. But yeah, Brad got dark.
Sorry.
Happens sometimes.
And so, but I would put it alongside some others, which y'all put a pin in that because that's the next exercise. But I do think it's an example. If you need to know how to follow up something good or greater with something even better, watch these two films back to back
Yep.
and take notes. That's just the reality of it. I like where you went, Kevin, because I was kind of leaning in the same direction of, and it's kind of changed over time with my opinions of things and whatnot. But like, I'm trying to be nice, but I'm trying to be honest. So I'm gonna say everything but Genesis. I'm sure I could find some nice things if I really sat on it, but like everything but Genesis, for me especially, has some sort of advancement, some sort of nostalgia, some sort of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And I take the cop out as well of like, I think although T2 is a great example, I think they all have something that I love and that make them all valid as well.
Absolutely.
It's one of those hard things where it's just like, there's no bad one. Like, it's like Star Wars. Like, there's no bad one.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I don't know what to do with that.
It's because it's, when you encounter something foundational, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what these things become, these films or comic books or IP that we consume. It's so foundational, and it's more than just a comfort blanket. It's more than anything like that. It's your idealized world that you want to live in. It's this avenue in which you get to experience something that might feel like it's just for you, and you get to close off the rest of the world, and you just get to inhabit this thing. And especially when you're young, you don't realize how foundational these things are until you really start to examine it as you get older. And then, it should just enrich your love for that thing. And it does sound weird on its face for me to be waxing poetic about Terminator.
Not at all.
But content's content. Like, some people do that with paintings that are 1,800 years old, and we do it with movies that are way more entertaining.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And it's like, but like the genesis for everything that I'm into, Star Wars, Batman, Marvel, all of it began with my parents' rather reckless decision to let a 4-year-old kid watch Terminator 1.
Yes.
I would disturb my grandparents because I would throw a leather jacket and some sunglasses on and some toy guns, and I'd go shoot up a police station because that was normal.
There is a period captured in film where I wore sunglasses any opportunity I could in pictures because of Terminator.
So, I'm gonna get my mom to send me a picture of me doing that. I'm gonna share it in the Discord. Everyone's gonna see little Termakev.
There you go. Hit us up. And that's a good plug. Nerd Herder Podcast does have a Discord. And I think for a couple more days, if you head to our profile, you can find the link where you can access it freely. Not that we're going to keep that necessarily closed all the time, but at least for now, we're inviting anybody that wants to check it out, where we talk about episodes before they come out and all that good stuff. So if you want to check it out, do so. And if for nothing else, see Baby Kev. So like I said, put a pin in for the final round table. I want to hear from everybody one more sequel, right? Because we're giving this one a lot of high praise and fair, it's due. But there are other ones I think of, and I'm sure that with our brains combined, you as well. But what's one from everybody? What's another perfect sequel for you on the DVD VHS shelf?
I've got an answer.
Okay,
I've got one.
I have two answers actually.
Peter.
First one, Temple of Doom. 100%. Temple of Doom is a fantastic movie.
A prequel, right?
No,
it's
a sequel. Because they make mention of Marion at some point. Don't they? Kev?
I thought they did.
Correct me. I think.
I could be completely wrong, but I thought that one of them was a prequel.
I am not an authority on Indiana Jones, so I'm gonna bow out.
You just play one on television.
Well,
yeah.
Anyway, I'm not gonna be that guy. Yeah, it came out after the first one, so yes, I'll give it to you.
Temple of Doom is an excellent movie. It stands alone, which makes a fantastic sequel, in my opinion. It plays off of the first one very well. It does more character work for Indy in general. My other answer is my favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, TMNT 2, Secret of the Ooze.
Andy, thank you.
Such a good freaking movie.
Is it a prequel?
It's a prequel. I was right.
I trust Andy. I trust their word more than anyone else.
Let's circle back to the Secret of the Ooze thing, because I mean, come on, let's let Tokar, Razor, Super Shredder, Vanilla Ice.
I actually had somebody like dissing on
them right here.
Tuck on Razor the other day, and I'm like, bruh, do not talk
outta
about
here.
babies like that.
Get at their babies.
They're a baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I have. This is the only thing that I can take off the shelf without absolutely destroying everything. But I have my TCRI slime right here.
Yes.
Secret of the Ooze is very much like T2 in that most people talk about the second one.
I'll give it to him.
You know. Oh yeah, absolutely. I love
Dude,
that.
the
Again,
suits
Stan
improved.
Winston.
Like
I love my guy Stan.
Mhm.
Brad, you said you had one too?
I did, but now I'm rethinking, and I'm like, oh, really though? I mean,
don't second guess yourself.
Go with
here.
your gut.
Speak with your heart, babe.
I was gonna say Aliens.
Yeah. Yes.
Good.
Well,
Very good movie.
Yes.
I mean, I know a lot of people would disagree, but I mean, I feel like escalating of the threat. I mean, they played off of Ripley very well. Especially the motherly instincts after finding out that her daughter is now, twice her age and I think, has she passed on? No, she hadn't passed yet. But I mean, I don't know. They did something, and I mean, a lot of people don't like it because they brought in the Marines, but I mean, I like the Marines.
Yeah.
Bonus points. It's also another Jim Cameron.
Sure is.
Stan Winston redesign
Sure is.
of the aliens. Like so much good stuff. Bill Paxton. You get Michael Biehn. Yeah. I love that movie so much. I think it's a good escalation. Like I love my alien horror, but I also do love just the Starship Trooper swarm, kill them all kind of like.
I think the only alien movie that no one talks about is 4.
Oh no, I talk give me a shot. Let me do it. I would talk about that. Bro, I
enjoy 4. I enjoy 4. Would I say it's a perfect sequel? No.
There's not. This is all right. Here's your content, guys. I'm coming on one day. There's not a bad Aliens movie. Like I love all of them dearly. Like there's no Genesis in there. They are all great. And I'm talking Prometheus.
So rude.
Covenant.
Prometheus and Covenant.
Oh yes. They are all fantastic. I love them all, and they are all valid children.
Covenant freaked me out.
Covenant was great.
The way Covenant ended. That freaked me out.
Sorry, that just tickled me deeply. That was I love those movies, that series, because of everything, it's the most consistent for me of that kind of that era, right? Like, so, I mean, they went from 1979 to 2018, I believe.
I think Covenant came out in 18.
Yes, it was 2018.
They had a banger every time. I mean, there's some dips in quality. You could argue for Predator, Terminator, all of that, but man.
But when you're invested in a franchise, none of that matters.
Oh,
when
sure.
You're invested,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
it could be the most maligned movie by literally everybody, and you'll be the one person being like, "Nah, I still like it."
Like Kevin with Genesis.
Yeah. There's redeeming qualities for me.
And that's the fine, because I'll be the first. It's my opinion. I'll take it. Everything about Genesis is just my opinion. Like
exactly.
It is not law.
Exactly. No, there's no stakes here.
I get nothing for hating a movie or telling you that you're wrong. But tell me your favorite other sequel so I can tell you you're wrong.
So
don't you dare to say Genesis.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think of another perfect sequel. I mean, of course, everyone would say Empire Strikes Back, right? Because naturally,
sure.
I'd say
my wife hates Empire.
Yeah.
Your wife is wrong.
Yeah. I tell her, like, she will skip the Hoth battle every time, and I'm like, no, I want to watch the Hoth battle.
Oh,
That's, you know what?
Okay.
painful.
At least she watches it with you, pal.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
true.
I mean,
So
you do what you got to do.
perfect sequel, though. I mean, okay. I would argue that The Last Jedi is the perfect sequel to Force Awakens.
Oh,
Absolutely.
But you know what? It keeps coming to my brain, and I can't. It's like it's a mind worm. I can't get it out of there. It's The Two Towers.
the best
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings films for sure.
Because like the middle chapters of anything are always very difficult. Because how do you take a middle chapter and give it a beginning, middle, and an end, and have a satisfying climax? It's not an easy thing to pull off, which is why there's not as many trilogies as you'd think there'd be.
Yeah.
You know, so The Two Towers. It kind of does everything that a sequel needs to do. It escalates, but it also elevates everything, and it doesn't sacrifice on the emotional beats. It just builds
Not at all.
more. It builds more around the characters. Plus, any movie that ends with Samwise giving a speech that's going to leave you in a puddle of tears
It still hits to this day.
every time. Like my wife looks at me like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yeah."
I will say, like, the Lord of the Rings, like the first one, you never like the big goosebump moment was the Balrog. That was the
Absolutely.
goosebump moment. With Two Towers, the thing that gave me goosebumps was Helm's Deep.
Oh yes.
Like that
Absolutely.
that whole sequence was just amazing.
Yeah, because like
That is film.
exactly
Yes.
because like in the books, Helm's Deep is a chapter, and
Yeah.
Tolkien he's really good at descriptions, but when it comes to battles, he kind of just glosses over some stuff because it's literature, right? Like the way that Peter Jackson built the suspense to Helm's Deep, like everything built up to that. So by the time the Uruk-hai show up at Helm's Deep and like they're just marching, you're on the edge of your seat because you don't know what's gonna. It's an insane feat of filmmaking. Are you ready to go another hour? Because we're about to go Two Towers for a whole other
I was
hour.
about to say.
Listen, man, don't get me started on Lord of the Rings.
The chat. But yeah, no, I mean, Lord of the Rings is the Star Wars of fantasy for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in film when you get into the technicality and everything. But
the Ride of the Rohirrim.
we'll save that for when we inevitably talk about it with that Amazon show coming out. Because we got to. For me, just because, so like I could pull a boop and do a prequel sequel. It came out.
A prequel sequel.
It's technically the 6th film to come out in the series, but it's technically the first in the timeline because they disrespect the timeline in every film. But Bumblebee is, I mean, it's it is the definitive live action Transformers movie.
Is it?
I've heard
I haven't
that.
gotten the chance to watch it.
It's so good.
It's really, really good.
I like it.
And like I said, it's what they should have done in the first place to introduce Transformers to film. It resets the timeline, so it becomes technically the first film. But the reason I count it as such a perfect sequel is because it comes out after 5 movies of declining quality. And so it's like, to follow that up when people are exhausted and tired of Transformers and actually have a good movie, bonus points.
Good point.
For actual sequels, because it's adjacent to what we just recently finished talking about, and people can go back and check out more in-depth thoughts on. But The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is a perfect second and a third, and it's the perfect sequel, I think. I mean, I think we talked about it at length, so you can check out the episode, but like it just did everything so right to make itself the best of what that trilogy had to offer. I
would agree.
And so, but yeah, if you're checking this out after the fact, you can comment below, or you can hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you prefer to hit us. And let us know. I mean, what's another perfect sequel for you? Do you agree with Terminator 2 being in the Hall of Fame perfect sequels, or, you know,
merch?
So much clicking, so many things. Yeah. let us know either way. But next week, just some wrap up and a little bit of a tease for you. We are getting excited for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, by looking at our other favorite Jedi. And so we're going to share the hype and discuss some of our other favorites. Some you may know, some you may not. Who knows? But we're going to be joined by
I know.
some awesome guests for that. So join us if you'd like to contribute. Again, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are right there, or our Discord. You can let us know there. Maybe you vote and it gets considered and you get featured on the show. That'd be awesome. Thank you to our patrons. I wanted to shout out Nick, one of our amazing patrons who recently had a 1-year anniversary with us as a giver. And he also mentioned aliens as well. And so
there you go.
Like at that point, I'm like, yeah, he can stay. He's good. He's good.
Yeah. You've earned your spot.
Right. You are good people, sir. Thank you again to our lovely guests, Kev, Brad. Y'all are beautiful people. We appreciate you. Go check out their podcast.
Thanks. It's always good to be here.
You will be again.
I'll be in the back room.
Yeah.
Right. You're just going back to the back room.
Just tell Kevin and it's like, hey man, they want you on. I'll be like, I'm on my way.
There you go. We'll throw up the Brad signal.
Yes.
But yeah, appreciate you guys. If you need a shot in the arm or really in your ears, check out the Force Losers podcast for sure. They got plenty of content as you await with bated breath their next new episode. So
coming 2024.
Go back to the first 10, just see how go to the formative years.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
Please no,
don't.
And last, just thanks to everyone for checking us out. However you are consuming this podcast, we appreciate you because you chose to allow us in, and we appreciate that. And so, but again, I want to say, keep the conversation going. Find us on social media so that this doesn't have to be the end when this episode wraps up. You can keep the fun going all night long.
Like that.
It's a Waterboy reference. Sorry.
I know.
Yep, I got it.
Good night.
Right. So before we wrap up, I want to give a 1, 2, 3, and then I want everybody's best. I'll be back.
Okay.
All right. You ready? Good. 1, 2, 3.
I'll be back.
Wait a minute. You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.